Ki Jano Vishnupadaya Krishna Vasnaya Bhutare Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Jimajindra Salvajamanina Prabhupada Bhakti Sukhaya Krishna Kirtana Sankirtana Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachani Vishesha Paschatya Deshatani Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Hanishati Avatiryaso Hanishyatya Avatiryaso Hanishyatya Avatiryaso Yatadrin Shata Parva Drik Yatadrin Shata Parva Drik Yatadrin Shata Parva Drik Hanishyatya Vitiryaso Yatadrin Shata Parva Drik Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Hanishyatya Vitiryaso Yatadrin Shata Paravadrik Tada Vishveshvara Krudho Bhagaval Loka Bhavana Hanishyatya Vitiryaso Yatadrin Shata Paravadrik Vaishnavis? kind of interesting how the world is changing. You know, we all used to have books, and now we've all got our devices in front of us. But it's kind of cool because, like in here, you've got everything that Prabhupada ever wrote, every lecture he ever spoke. It's pretty amazing. Before you had to sort of carry a truck around, you'd have all that stuff. I remember when I first went to university, they had this computer which was like a whole floor of a building. You know, like about half the floor. Now it's all in there. It's pretty amazing how things have changed. But still, Krishna's God. Tada, at that time, Vishva Ishvara, the Lord of the universe. It literally means the control. Vishva means like the universe, and Ishvara means the controller or the master. Krudha, in great anger. And it's kind of interesting because, like we'll see here, it says here Vishveshvara and then Bhagavan, just so you're really clear who we're talking about here. Just so there's no ambiguity. You don't think, oh, maybe it's someone else. You know, no. This is the Lord of the universe and also the Supreme Personality of Godhead, possessing all opulences. Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Loka Bhavana, desiring the welfare of the people in general. Hanishyati, will kill. Avatirya, descending himself. Asal, he. Yata, as if. Adrin, the mountains. Shata Paravadrik, the controller of the thunderbolt. Indra. At that time, the Lord of the universe, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the well-wisher of all living entities, will descend and kill them, just as Indra smashes the mountains with his thunderbolts. And you can see here, like the way that Kashyapa Muni is describing this, he could have just said, God will come and kill them, which is literally what it's saying here. But no, he just to sort of make it really clear, but also just to demonstrate how powerful the Lord is. And also, you know, his nature towards the jivas. He adds description there. So first off, in two ways he defines that it's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He says he's the master of the universe, but he's also Bhagavan, the possessor of all opulences. And then he said he's the well-wisher of all living entities. And he's going to kill them just as Indra smashes a mountain, just to indicate how powerful Krishna is. Just like, you know, Indra with his thunderbolt, he might smash on a mountain. And we've seen, maybe not so much when thunderbolts hit mountains, but you know, like up home sometimes we see lightning striking trees and it just like blasts them apart. It's just like, you know, you just hear this massive boom. It's really, really loud. I don't know if you've ever been near to a thunderbolt when it's hit the ground, but it's super loud. And like your ears are kind of ringing after it, or a little bit after that. And the tree's just obliterated, and sometimes you'll just see there's like fire just sort of coming out of the top of the tree, and you know, and there's a few, you know, every now and then, because we get a lot of lightning up home, and every now and then you get a lightning strike really nearby, and yeah, it just like obliterates all the trees. And that's like part of, we see it's part of the progression of Kali Yuga, because I remember, you know, walking up to Mount Warning, you know, walking up the hill there, or the trail there some years back, and there were some really big trees there, like, you know, maybe 150 foot tall, maybe a bit taller than that, really big trees. They're gone now, just been struck by lightning or pushed over by storms and stuff. So we see, you know, and it describes in the end of the Bhagavatam that eventually all the trees will be quite small, and not only that, the people will be quite small, but the cockroaches are going to be really big. Yeah. So all the inauspicious, just like you see, like, you know, I remember when I was a kid, you didn't see crows very much, but now they're everywhere. And you go to India, what's the major bird? They're crows, wah, 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 everywhere. You know, and it's, as Kali Yuga progresses, you know, you'll see that trees with thorns will become more prominent. Like you walk around Braj, and there's, you know, especially on the Prikram Marg around through Ram and Reti at the back there, there's all these like small bushes with these massive big thorns on them. And you have to be very careful, because the thorn easily goes through your foot. And you'll see as Kali Yuga progresses how all these inauspicious things will become more prominent, yet the auspicious things will become less prominent. And even we'll see, like Vrindavan Dham is gradually going to disappear. But fortunately, Mayapur will become more prevalent, because Mayapur is this Audarya Dham. It's very compassionate, very merciful. So we'll see how it becomes more and more prominent. Read Srila Prabhupada's purport, really interesting purport. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.8, who knows 4.8? Without looking at your device. You're not allowed to cheat. 4.8, what is it? Paritraya saranam vinischaya chadushkritam dharma sangstapanataya sambhavami yuge yuge. To deliver the pious and to annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. So that's exactly what's being described in this verse. Krishna is appearing. And he says, I myself. Not someone else. I don't send someone else. I come. And as the verse describes, he says, Paritanaya saranam vinaschaya chaduskritam. So the sadhus, Paritanaya, to liberate them, to not liberate them, but to elevate them, to save them. And vinaschaya means to destroy. Chaduskritam, the duskritas, the miscreants. He destroys them. Yeah? Dharma sangstapanapaya, you have like a samstakapacharya, he establishes something. Yeah? So he's saying, I establish religious principles. Yeah? I was wondering why it was rocking. So he re-establishes the principle of millennium religion, and he does it yuge. Millennium after millennium, he does it. Yuga after yuga, he comes to establish the principles of religion. Because as Kashyapa is pointing out here in this purport, he says loka bhavana. So the loka means the worlds, and bhavana means nature, or bhava means nature, but it seems like bhavana, the nature, his nature is to wish the welfare of all living entities on these worlds. So he appears, continually appears just for the benefit of the living entities. And we can see this in so many features of the Lord, just like I mentioned the other day about the deity. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would describe the deity as being the Archa Vigraha incarnation. And he would define the Archa Vigraha as being the mercy manifestation of the Lord. Because the deity, he comes only for our benefit. No other reason he comes here. You think he comes here to accept your offerings? Whatever bulgur you might cook for him, or the plastic jewelry you're going to offer him, or the cheap metal kind of paraphernalia you're going to use, and the ghee wicks and the incense that that's usually full of animal products. When they make incense, they actually chop up cowhide and they put cowhide in it to bind it together. So most of this stuff's contaminated. Or the fragrant oils, the so-called fragrant oils we offer, they're full of chemicals. Most of the fragrant oils you get these days are just chemicals, unless you go on a search. So that's not why he comes here. He comes here simply to bestow his mercy upon us. What can we offer that he's not already getting in Goloka Vrindavan? He's got Radharani cooking for him. He's got Mother Yasoda looking after him. You read about their devotional service, and then you contrast it with our devotional service. It's we don't even fit into we're not even in the ballpark really. Or then you read about great souls like Raghava Pandit, the devotional service he was offering to the Lord. All these great Vaishnavas. It's just extraordinary. The extent they would go to serve Krishna. So when we reflect like that, we can really get an understanding of what's being described here about this Loka Bhavana, how he really has this mood of wishing the welfare of living entities. And we see in the Bhagavad Gita also, the 5th chapter, it's described as Suridam Sarvabhutanam, at the end of the 5th chapter. Very important verse, that one. And so this Suridam, Surit, So su is like a prefix that amplifies something, increases something. It means like very. Yeah? Hrit means the heart. Or hrit means the heart. And so this suhridam, it means this means the well-wishing friend. That person who has your best interests at heart. Yeah? And so it says suhridam sarva bhutanam. So he's the best well-wishing friend of all living beings. So we might think that I'm so and so's friend, and I want good for them. I want to do them good. But really, as a conditioned living entity, what can we do for someone else? Nothing, because you're not even this body. You're the spirit soul inside the body, and the body. Even with the body, what can you do unless Krishna is assisting you? So Prabhupada describes this verse, this point of the supreme well-wishing friend. He says actually, I'm not your friend. Krishna is your only friend. And this is the point. Prabhupada, he makes this point when he elaborates on that 529, that if we can understand these points that are mentioned in this sloka, we'll actually become peaceful in this world. And we see at the end of the last line of the sloka, it says gyatva mam. He said, knowing me, like this, thus, shantim, peace, richity attains. So if we understand Krishna like this, we'll actually attain peace. So Prabhupada, he elaborates on the verse in many different ways, but one way he elaborates on this particular line, he said, actually, I am not your friend. Krishna is your only friend, but I can be your friend in as much as I can introduce you to Krishna. And that way we can be friends. So, we have this like mundane idea of friendship in this material world, but it really extends to, I'm your friend as long as I can enjoy. If I can enjoy your association, like, in a marriage, I'm talking mundane marriage, obviously not devotional marriage, but a mundane marriage, it's like, as much as I can enjoy sex life with you, then okay, the marriage is a good thing. But when the sex life becomes unenjoyable, or when the husband can no longer provide, then they want to get rid of them. They want to put them in an old age home or something like that. They just want to move them on. Use by date's expired. But in a devotional relationship, it's very, very different. We have this relationship where we're assisting each other to grow in Krishna consciousness, to develop in Krishna consciousness. So so Prabhupada makes that point that in as much as I can show you Krishna, then I'm your friend. So it's the same for the living entities. If we have this idea of we want to help people, we want to be their friend, then we have to show them Krishna. We have to introduce them to Krishna, because that's really all you can do for another living entity. You can't save them from any situation in this material world. All you can do is show them Krishna. Or if you're not capable, show them that person who can show them Krishna. Introduce them to the spiritual master. So, very interesting points. Then, okay, so as stated in Bhagavad Gita 4.8, the Lord descends as an incarnation to deliver the devotees and to kill the miscreants. The Lord of the universe and of everything would appear to kill the sons of deity because of their offending the devotees of the Lord. So this is the main reason that Prabhupada gives here, because of the way Hiranyaksha, he was creating so much disturbance, and then Hiranyakashipu, he was tormenting his son, and he was terrorizing the whole universe basically. Hiranyaksha was also terrorizing the whole universe, and this is the point that's made in verse 39. There are many agents of the Lord, such as Indra, Chandra, Varuna, the goddess Durga, and Kali, who can chastise any formidable miscreants in the world. Durga and Kali particularly, very, very powerful. Durga can destroy the whole world without any problem. She's so powerful. And we're seeing, as Kali progresses, Kali Yuga progresses, how and it's kind of really interesting. It's really subtle, slow kind of degradation. You don't really, day to day, you don't really see it. But if you look at it over the at least the time period of your own life, you can see what it was like when you were a child and what it's like now. It's really changed a lot. And if you kind of reflect to the point where you get to be older, maybe 50s, 60s, 70s, whatever, and look back to now, it'll really, just like we're talking about mobile phones. I mean, when I was a kid, right, the phones you used to zzz like that, and if you wanted to, say for instance, you're here in Sydney now, and you wanted to dial someone who's in Melbourne, right? Now you just pick up your phone and dial the number. They call it STD, subscriber trunk dialing. But what you had to do in those days was you had to pick up the phone, you go tick, 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 tick on the thing, on the hanger thing, and that'd get the attention of the operator. And then you say, I'd like to book a call to Melbourne. Right? And then they'd look up the thing and say, okay, you can have your call at this time. Right? Because there was only so many lines. And it's just amazing how different it is now. You just like pick up the phone, you can ring anywhere in the world. But before you had to book a call. I remember my parents doing that when we were young. We never did it. We didn't get in trouble if you did stuff like that. Book a call to Granny, But so we can see just with something simple like phone calls how much it's changed. So if you look at the qualities of people, etc., how much it's changed. And how degraded the age is becoming. So just if you sort of project that forward, you can see actually as things go on, it's going to become more and more degraded. So don't be surprised. And the thing is also the influence of Durga and Kali, as I was saying, is very subtle. It's not like, sometimes it happens, just like, with these weather events, like sometimes you can see like, you get this like massive dumping of rain, which, never seen before, or you get these massive bushfires never seen before, or you get a war or a pandemic. Again, this is all the influence of Kali. So sometimes it's quite significant. Sometimes it's just you don't notice. It's so subtle you don't notice it. It's just like a tree growing. You see, like if you have a big tree growing out here, but and the roots are all growing underground. You don't see them where they're growing, but eventually they spread and they get into all your pipes and break the pipes and block up the plumbing and all this type of stuff. Very, very slow, subtle, and that's often or mostly how the effect of Kali is happening. It's a very subtle thing, but very, very powerful. You can't stop it. It's just like time. We don't really notice the passing of time, but you can't stop it. In the material world, you cannot stop time. It just keeps going from one second to the next, the next, the next. And as the Acharyas point out, if we're not using that time in the service of Krishna, it's the cause of our demise. But if we're using the time for the service of Krishna, it's the cause of our liberation. And that's why for a devotee, time has no influence, because ultimately time will bring you back to the lotus feet of Krishna. So if you see it like that, then time is, it's just like, that sometimes the Acharyas will give the example of a knife. You can take a sharp knife, and someone who's talented will use that knife to save someone's life. I had an operation here where they removed a tumor from my body, so it saved my life. But someone else, a crazy person can take the same knife and kill someone with it. So it's like that. So the agents of the Lord who can chastise any formidable miscreants in the world. The example of mountains being smashed by a thunderbolt is very appropriate. The mountain is considered the most strongly built body within the universe, yet it can be easily smashed by the arrangement of the Lord. So it doesn't matter how strong or powerful something is, by Krishna's arrangement, it's nothing. He can destroy a whole universe. He creates the universe just by thinking, just by a glance. He impregnates, Ramadevi, and then from that the whole universe comes about. So just by a glance he can do that. So just imagine what he can do if you really get serious about it. He could. The Supreme Personality of Godhead does not need to descend in order to kill any strongly built body. He comes down just for the sake of his devotees. Everyone is subject to the miseries offered by material nature, but because the activities of the miscreants, such as killing innocent people and animals or torturing women, are harmful to everyone and are therefore a source of pain for the devotees, the Lord comes down. He descends only to give relief to his ardent devotees. The killing of the miscreants by the Lord is also the mercy of the Lord toward the miscreant. Although apparently the Lord takes the side of the devotee, since the Lord is absolute, there is no difference between his activities of killing the miscreants and his favouring the devotees. And there's a verse in the Gita that makes this point. I was trying to remember which verse it is. It's maybe in the 16th or 17th chapter. Do you know this verse, Ganesha? Where he talks about how to show mercy to the miscreants. He casts them down to the lower species of life. I can't remember which verse it is. There's one verse. Huh? No, I thought it was that verse, but that's not the exact verse I'm looking for. Anyhow, it's an interesting concept there. Huh? No. Anyhow, I'll go look for it later. But yeah, I just couldn't remember what the verse was. Yeah. But anyhow, we see here how Srila Prabhupada is describing. He's elaborating on this verse because the point here is being made is that actually the Lord is the well-wisher of all living entities, not just the devotees. But in this circumstance, we see how the devotees are being tormented by these demons. So Krishna comes for the pleasure of the devotees. We see in the Gita, it says, Paritanaya saranam vinaschaya chadushkitam. So it's saying, to save the devotees. But actually, the devotees need saving. Because, as Prabhupada, he used the point here about the what's the word he used? I think he says the ardent devotee. It gives relief to his ardent devotees. So he's saying for those devotees who are very, very advanced or very, very determined in devotional service, he comes down for their pleasure, not to save them. Because you look at the example of Prahlad Maharaj. Did he need to be saved? Every situation his father presented to him to torment him, to torture him, basically to try and cause him pain, difficulty, to try to kill him. What did he do? He just immersed himself in the thought of Krishna. And there's that interesting. I don't know what you call it, but there's Madho Jiva. Where the Prabhupada talks about this one a lot. It talks about the butcher. Don't die, because of your sinful activities. If you die, you're going to be tortured. And then he talks about the king's son, and then also he talks about the devotee. And for the devotee, he says, live or die. Don't live, don't die. It doesn't really matter because you're always absorbed in thoughts of Krishna. So, and that's the situation for the devotee. Actually, whether they hear, there's a verse about it too, and I can't. I'm just going a bit blank on verses today. Sometimes they just rattle off your tongue, and other times you're like, what was that verse? I can't remember. Anyhow, so there's a verse where it's described how that heaven or hell is the same thing. They don't, it doesn't matter to a devotee. Why? Because Narayana Parasave, Narayana Parasave Apitulya. A little bit louder, I can't quite. Na Kutashana Bibiti, Svaga Apavaga Narekeshu, Apitulyata Darshana. So for the devotees of the Lord, they're always absorbed in Narayan. So it doesn't matter to them whether in the heaven or the hellish planets. This is actually Chitraketu was talking to Parvati when Parvati cursed him. He said, I don't mind, you just send me to hell. I don't really care, because for a devotee of the Lord, heaven and hell is all the same thing. Why? It's not because they're just oblivious or they're Mayavadis, it's all one. No, because they're always absorbed in the thought of Krishna, so it doesn't really matter to them what situation they find themselves in, because they're always absorbed in the thought of Krishna. They're peaceful. And this is as I was quoting this verse from the 5th chapter, how because the devotees always sing that Krishna is the supreme proprietor, the supreme enjoyer, the supreme well-wisher of all living entities. He's peaceful. He never has any aspiration for anything else, because he's just absorbed in the thought of Krishna. And we see, where was I giving class before? Maybe up in Govardhan. It was talking about, it was, I was listening to a lecture from Tamal Krishna Maharaj. I used to giving lectures on the Brahma Samhita. And in the Brahma Samhita, it describes, the Brahma that's being, the Brahma that's speaking the Brahma Samhita, and Tamal Krishna Maharaj is describing how actually he's not a pure unalloyed devotee because he has this desire to control, he has this desire to be the creator, but he is very advanced because why? Because he is doing it simply under Krishna's instructions. He's so elevated he can actually talk to Krishna directly. That's pretty elevated. He meets Krishna directly. It's not like, it's just like here in Australia. If you go up to Canberra and you go and knock on the Prime Minister's door, do you think they're going to let you in? You probably won't even get to the door. It's just like in London, if you want to go to 10 Downing Street, there's like gates either end of Downing Street. You can't actually get in there, and there's police everywhere. So you have to have the qualification. So in the same way, for someone like Brahma, when he gets to regularly meet with Krishna, it's obviously indicating he's a very, very qualified person. Yet still he has material desires. But so for him, different situations are distressful. Different situations cause him happiness. But for this devotee who's this Narayana Para, what was it? Narayana Parayana. For this devotee, he's just actually constantly absorbed in thought of Krishna. No material desire, no desire for anything separate from the service of Krishna. Just like we see the residents of Vrindavan, they have this situation where they have no desire other than the satisfaction of Krishna. Therefore, they're peaceful. But it doesn't mean that they don't experience calamities, because we see that regularly in Vrindavan, there's various calamities arise. But then we also see, what do the devotees do? What do the Brajbasis do when there's calamities? They automatically take shelter of Krishna. They don't try and defend themselves. They don't try and save themselves. Like a lesser devotee might do. A lesser devotee might, try to take shelter of their own strong arms, or take shelter of their strong husband or their strong father or whatever like that. But the devotees in Braj, whatever happens, they know Nanda Maharaj is strong, they know the cowherd men are strong and things like that, but they just take shelter of Krishna. They always take shelter of Krishna. So this is the extent of their determination in devotional service, and the extent of their attachment to Krishna. And so, as I was saying, we can see that the devotees, the ardent devotees, they don't need to be saved. And in the same way, Krishna, and Prabhupada's explaining here in this purport, that Krishna doesn't need to descend here for the Vinaschaya Chaduskritam, to annihilate the Duskritas. Why? Because the material nature can do that. And he's pointing that out here, that any of these agents, Shiva is one of his agents. And look at Lord Shiva, he destroys the whole universe. When he does his Tanda, huh? No, there's Tanda. Anyhow, I'm just going blank on all these words. I don't know why. But he does his dance at the end. He has his dum dum drum, and he plays his dum dum drum, and he dances, and this dance causes the destruction of the universe. So he doesn't even have to get a club or anything. He just dances and he destroys it all. So again, he's very powerful. So we can see that, even though we get personalities like Hiranyaksha, and Hiranyaksha was a pretty puffed up guy. He's saying, who is there who's strong enough to fight me? And he's going around and smashing the waves and stuff like that. And then this boar comes, and this is quite amazing. And it has this fight with Hiranyaksha, and the Devatas are getting really worried. Oh my gosh, he's going to be, this is Krishna, but he's going to be defeated. So it shows you that their level of bhakti is they're not completely surrendered, because they're attached to their kingdoms, and they don't have full faith that Krishna, they don't have full faith in the nature of Krishna, how he is the supreme absolute personality of Godhead, and that everything comes from him. They understand the philosophy, but they have a lot of jnana, but their level of vijnana is not that deep. Because, for someone who's a 100% servant of Krishna, they understand that, Krishna can, he can save me, he can destroy me, it's all up to him. But there's nothing, just like we see, the demons of Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, they were thinking, we're going to kill Krishna. The devotee would never think like that. That's not possible. How can you kill Krishna? He's the source of everything. He's eternal. He has a transcendental form. How can you kill a transcendental form? How can you bring about the end of a transcendental form? So the Devatas, they're not convinced, not 100% convinced about Krishna's nature. So when Lord Bor, and even when Lord Bor came, they weren't 100% convinced. Okay, this is God, but not. Maybe it's not. There's kind of like this nagging doubt there. So when Hiranyaksha was fighting with Varahadev and backwards and forwards, they were getting a little bit worried. And then the Lord, he tired of this fight, and he just went under the ear like that, just with a little clip. Not even a big smack, because they were smashing each other clubs. The clubs were covered in blood. Even the Lord Bor was manifesting blood from his body and things like that, just to enjoy the ras. Because this is the whole point of his fighting with Hiranyaksha, is he wanted to enjoy the ras of having a fight. Because he's in Gokul. He's not going to fight with anyone there. You can imagine having a fight with Sridham and drawing blood and stuff like that. No, that just doesn't happen. And even in Gokul, devotees, they asked Prabhupada one time, are there any demons there? And he said there's rumors of demons. So the rasas, the relationship is still there. So devotees, they'll hear, oh, the demon is coming, and they go take shelter of Krishna. But the demons never actually come, because that would be incompatible. This ghastly ras would be incompatible with the relationships that are there. So that never happens. But we see here, that the Lord descends because he wants to have a fight. And in Vaikuntha it's not going to happen because everyone's just, oh my dear Lord, how may I serve you? So that's, again, it's not compatible there. But Krishna makes these arrangements so he can enjoy pastimes, and that's why I was, in relation to your question the other day, I was talking about how we can see that this is not Mahamaya influencing. This has to be Yogamaya, because the conclusion is Krishna's pastimes. So we can see that because Krishna's pastimes are manifesting, it's the Lord's Yogamaya potency, his Lila Shakti, making these arrangements so Krishna can enjoy these transcendental pastimes. Because he doesn't need to come to annihilate these miscreants. But they're not ordinary miscreants, they're his personal servants, they're his gatekeepers. But then also, it's pointed out, Prabhupada points out, I'm not sure which Acharya he is quoting from, I think it might be Jiva Goswami. He points out in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that it's not always Jai and Vijay that descend as Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu. In the instance in the 7th canto it is. But these demons, they come and have fights regularly. Or these demons, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, regularly manifest to fight with the Lord. But in the instance mentioned in the Bhagavatam, it happens to be Jai and Vijay, so it's a particular Leela, but other times it manifests differently. And the fighting is different and the results are different, things like that, but it's still, Krishna's always victorious. But it's really, really interesting pastimes there. And then also, if we go through, there's a few verses here which are kind of connected. And actually we see the Acharyas, they put 38 and 39 together and 40 and 41 together. But if we look at this, we'll see that there's 5 points that sort of flow, like the essential points of these verses is how like your sons will cause constant lamentation to the three worlds. They will kill the poor faultless living entities. They'll torture women and enrage the great souls, and they will be killed. So that's like the progression. They're going to torment the three worlds. They're going to kill and torture innocent living entities, women. And this is actually very, very sinful to torment innocent living entities and women. Women are generally protected. Children are generally protected. So they'll be killing children also. And it describes how they'll be killing innocent and sinless living entities. So this is like, if a ruler punishes a sinful living entity, that's duty. They're doing what they're supposed to do, so there's no reaction. But if a ruler is tormenting innocent living entities who have no, they've done no wrong, committed no crime, that's very sinful. And so therefore that they have to be punished. But, they can easily be punished by the laws of material nature. They don't need to be, killed by the Lord himself. But because he wanted to enjoy pastimes, just like we see, with Hiranyaksha, he just wanted to enjoy the fighting ras and have some fun. But we see with Hiranyakashipu, it was very apparent how, because, Prahlad Maharaj was such a great devotee. I mean, Prahlad Maharaj is not an ordinary devotee. He's a very, very elevated soul. And we see actually he's also one of the Mahajans, so he understands religious principles. And so we see Prahlad Maharaj, he wasn't so bothered about his father. I mean, you can see like even his father was very threatening towards his son. But like you can just imagine like one of us, we have a child and we get threatening towards the child. The child's going to become quite fearful, especially someone like me because I'm quite big, So you stand over. Even sometimes I experience. I try to become more conscious of this. But when I stand close to people and they're shorter, that can be intimidating. So generally, I like to stand back a little bit just so that the height differential. Like my wife is up to here, and so when I'm with my wife, I need to make sure that especially if there's some tension in the conversation, that I stand back so she's not feeling threatened. Because you just have to be mindful of that. So with children, like if we're dealing with children, we start to get firm with them. A young child's going to feel threatened. But then Prahlad Maharaj, his father's trying to kill him. His father's like throwing him off hills, off mountains. He's trying to boil him in oil. He's trying to throw him in pits of snakes and have his soldiers kill him, stuff like that. And at no point did he feel threatened. Why? Because he'd taken shelter of Krishna. There was no doubt in his mind, there was no doubt in his heart that Krishna would protect him. No doubt. And we see there's so many wonderful stories of our acharyas and in the scriptures. Like, there's this wonderful story about that Brahmana, the two Brahmanas with Sakshi Gopal, right? This Brahmana, he goes and he visits Sakshi Gopal and says to Sakshi Gopal, I want you to come, it was Gopal at that point, he said, I want you to come and be the witness. And then the conversation ensued, and Gopal's saying, but I'm a deity, I can't walk. And then the Brahman says, he says, my dear Lord, if you can talk, you can walk. So we should go. And then so he walked, to South India. And so he had no doubt in his mind. And because of that conviction, Krishna was able to do. Well, Krishna is able to do, but Krishna did these things because of his conviction. We see the same in the story of Raghunandan Thakur. Young boy, 5 years old. His father's, had to go away. Mukunda had to go and to do some business in another village. So he taught Raghunandan Thakur how to do the deity worship. He's a young boy. And then so what happened was because his father told him that yes, the deity will come down and accept the offering. So he's thinking literally that Krishna is going to come and eat the food. And he had such conviction, he has such innocent, simple faith that Krishna would do it. And when Krishna didn't do it, he started to cry. He said, my dear Lord, my father said you come and eat. You must come and eat. And because he had such pure conviction that Krishna would do this, Krishna did it. He got down off the altar and he ate the whole offering. So we can see there's so many exchanges that the great souls have with the Lord, where the Lord acts directly in their lives because of their faith, because of their pure unalloyed faith, because of their pure unalloyed conviction that Krishna is there, that Krishna is present for me, that Krishna is the deity, whatever, The same with the name. You see with Srila Prabhupada, he had so much faith in the name that he knew the name would deliver these living entities. If you look at Prabhupada's preaching strategies, he didn't really try to give us anything else except the holy name. Because why? Because he had faith that the holy name would deliver us. And we see that faith, at least this is my realization. I don't have any commentaries from anyone telling me this, but it's just my realization when you look at Prabhupada's actions. When he went. Like, I mean, I've been to Tompkins Square Park, and it's just there's a tree they call it the Hare Krishna tree, where Prabhupada stood under that tree and he addressed people and told them about the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And he was just an old man on his own, and he had such faith in the holy name that everything we see has come from that faith. So if we have that same faith, that same conviction that Krishna is directly present as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it's not some mythological thing. Like some people, talk about the Bhagavad Gita as being mythological. If we have that same faith, Krishna will act in our lives and we'll perceive it directly. And that's the point, is you have to have faith. And that's the beginning of the process of bhakti, is faith. And if we have that faith, Krishna will act. He can act and he will act in our lives. And you see, even with elevated souls in our movement now, Jamuna used to call it the Krishna magic. When you have this conviction in the process, when you apply yourself purely, Prabhupada would say, when you apply yourself purely, when you follow the regular principles, you chant the holy name, then Krishna will act in your life. So we all have this capacity. Every living entity has this capacity to have this, tangible, fully kind of manifest relationship with Krishna. It's not something like esoteric that we only read about in the scriptures, and only these great souls from days of yore could actually experience these things. And of course, these personalities that are talked about in the Bhagavatam, they're very, very powerful personalities. Like you read some of these kings, or like Bhishma Dev or Arjuna, extraordinarily powerful personalities. But we can also have the same depth of relationship with Krishna. Why? Because we are Krishna's eternal servants. We have an eternal loving relationship with Krishna, but that relationship is forgotten. That relationship is covered by our ignorance. But if we break through that ignorance through the process of bhakti, we become purified and develop this unflinching faith that Krishna is my Lord, Krishna is my Master. I have a loving eternal relationship with Krishna. If we develop that faith, that conviction, it'll manifest. But we have to work at it. Yeah. All right. So, any questions, comments, discussion? Yes? I only did it because I was told to. You think Jitendra and Ganeshambhu, they told me to do it.
At the start and continuing, at least from my perspective, of my own kind of relation with Krishna, you start from a transactional kind of view where you can hear all these things about the devotee doesn't ask anything from Krishna, doesn't really say anything. A pure devotee doesn't really want anything, just wants to serve Krishna, that's it. But in our lives, day to day, there are so many different quandaries, reversals, etc. And we ask Krishna, please help me in this regard. And if he doesn't help us, then we're confused. If he helps us, then we believe in him.
Yeah.
So this idea of that transactional relationship and how that progresses, at what point in a devotee's practice does that fade away naturally, or does the devotee then learn that that's not correct, or how does one actually apply that approach that one should not be transactional?
Yeah, my understanding of the progression, it's a little bit like the sunrise. It's like if there's no moon around and there's no sun around, well, maybe not here. I mean, here there's all these lights and things, but if you're out in the countryside, you go outside on a moonless night, you can't see anything. But then as the sun starts to come up, gradually, you can start to make out different things around you, and then eventually you can see yourself, and then you can see the sun. So God realization is like that. It's like, okay, right now we're in the darkness of ignorance. Not as dark as some people, because some people in this material world have no idea that they're not this body. They have no idea that there's a personality called God. They hear about, that's just all Rubbish. Who believes that stuff? That's just superstition. Only children believe that. Children and ignorant people believe that sort of stuff. But then you find, there are others like us who have some knowledge that God does exist. We have some knowledge that we're not this body. We don't have any much practical realization because we're still functioning in terms of trying to enjoy the body, the mind, and the senses. When we see something attractive, we want to, engage with the object of the senses. We want to connect the senses with the object so we can get pleasure. Well, we think we get pleasure, but actually it's not, because it's temporary. Everything temporary brings misery. So it's not pleasure. But then, obviously, especially this notion of a transactional relationship, obviously we have to move beyond that. And one way that's going to help us to move beyond that is reading Shastra. Because Shastra will help us to understand or inform us about devotees such as Prahlad Maharaj, such as Raghunandan Thakur, such as Raghava Pandit, and all these personalities who are jivas, the same as we are. And the relationships they had with Krishna and the exchanges they had with Krishna and the reciprocation they got from that relationship. Or you look at Thakur Haridas, also a jiva, and his surrender to Krishna and how the Lord protected him. You can see there's when they were in the Mahaprakash Leela, where the Lord was manifesting all these different there was a big kirtan they had, and the Lord demonstrated how he was interacting in his devotees' lives, even in unseen ways. And when Thakur Haridas was being beaten in those 22 marketplaces, actually the Lord took those beatings on his own back because of his love, Thakur Haridas's love and his determination to serve Krishna. So as the determination develops, then that transactional kind of fades. That kind of mood fades. It can be like an abrupt full stop. Right, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm going to do this, but that's not so common. You can see in the was it Katvanga Maharaj, I think, who was fighting for the Devatas for thousands of years, and then they won the war because of Katvanga Maharaj's involvement. And then when he's finished, he was going to go back down to where the earthly planet where he lived, and he noticed that everything was gone because he'd been fighting the Devatas and he was living in their time. So like millions of years had transpired, and his kingdom, everything was gone. But then he asked them. Actually, they asked him if he wanted some benediction, and he said, "Yeah, I just want to know how much longer I have to live." And they said, "Oh, you only have a few moments left to live." So immediately he just sat down and became fully Krishna conscious. But he's a great personality, we're not so wonderful. So generally for us, it's going to be more of a gradual progression. So, by applying yourself to the process of bhakti, then these material desires gradually, and it can take years, it can take decades, it can take lives. But by applying ourselves to the process of bhakti, I remember one time this devotee used to give class in Govardhan regularly. He was a temple president there for a while. Practically every class he used the same analogy. He says, many drops of water wear away the stone. So devotional service is like that. It's like, I don't know if you've travelled around up in New Govardhan area, but there's up at Natural Arch, there's this really interesting waterfall, and you can see how the water over time has eroded the stones. But what's actually happened is the water used to go over, then down, these falls. But what's happened is there was a soft part in the stones, so the water actually wore a hole through where the soft part was, and so it drops down through the rock into this cavern, and then flows out. And you can see, just even the time that I've been visiting there, I can see how it's changing. So you can see the effect of just something like water. Like, if I get this water and I pour it on the floor, I'm not going to notice much difference in the marble, or any difference except that it's wet. But if I was to do that for a long time, then you'd notice that the marble was wearing away. So in the same way, in devotional service, by applying ourselves to the process of bhakti, it has a rapid effect. And Rupa Goswami does, if you look at it in terms of our span of our existence, it's quite rapid. But if we take it in terms of this one lifetime, sometimes it seems like it's not really happening. You know? And sometimes devotees just feel, I'm not making any advancement. But then you have to sort of step back from it all and look at the big picture. If you look back 10 years ago, where were you in terms of devotional service? And you look at now, you can see, wow, I've really made a lot of progress here. You know, or if I look, back, 40, 50 years back, and just look at my life then, it was like, as Pankaj Prabhu one time said in the class, he said, before I came to devotional service, I was just a regular dog. And I look at what I was doing before, and I was behaving like a dog, literally. Just all the things. Except I wasn't sniffing backsides, but everything else I was doing. But so you can see, through the process of bhakti, there's 6 things that come as a result of bhakti, and one of the things that comes is subhada. Your life becomes auspicious, and the cessation of suffering. This is almost instantaneously when you take to the practice of bhakti, these things come about. So it's a very, very powerful process. But just keep in mind, we're really conditioned. Our conditioning is really, really deep. So, it'll take time. Sorry, I do give long answers, I'm sorry. Anything else? Prabhu? You're going to ask me a complicated question I can't answer. I know. Every time you ask me a question I can't answer.
Just wondering, the demigods at Varnavia, like Indra's thunderbolt, is there also a personality? And has Indra got more than one thunderbolt?
I don't know. I told you you'd ask me a question I don't know the answer to.
In the translation it says plural, thunderbolts.
Yes, sir. I mean, he has a thunderbolt weapon called the Vraja. Yeah? And that Vraja casts thunderbolts. It's just like you have a bow, right? And you shoot arrows from the bow. Yeah? So he has, the Vraja is the thunderbolt weapon. It look, at least in the drawings, it looks like a kind of like a mushala or a mace or something, and it's just but maybe that's just imagination, I don't know. But it casts thunderbolts. So the thunderbolts are plural, but the weapon is one. That much I know. The other part I don't know about whether it's a personality or not. Because, I could speculate, but someone may know more about it I'm sure plenty of people know more about it than I do. But I would think that in the spiritual world, everything is animate. All the rocks, the trees, the trees naturally, but the rocks, the water, everything's a jiva, a living entity in the spiritual world. I don't think it's the same in the material world. There are animate and inanimate objects in the material world. Animate objects have life in the material world. Inanimate objects don't. So, just, logically sort of following the logic there, you can conclude because it's a material thing, then likely it is matter. It is just a weapon. Likely it doesn't have a, I'm definitely willing to learn more about that. You have a question?
Yeah, I was just I've been thinking a lot about that doubt in Krishna.
The what?
The doubt that I have in Krishna.
Yeah.